A while back, I posted a poll on the community post on YouTube, basically asking if you were looking for a minimalistic 22 long rifle survival rifle, what would you pick? And I basically said, would you pick a Chiappa Little Badger or would you pick a Henry US Survival? And the Henry US Survival won out over the Little Badger, and a lot of the reasons were that it's semi-auto, it floats, this, that, and the other thing. But people also suggested that a Ruger 1022 would be a better solution. So I decided to make a video actually with all three of these in it, and I'm going to compare them on various different aspects and see which one logically makes the most sense. And I'm looking at the readiness to use, how long it takes to deploy, how long it takes to store the firearm, the portability, the weight, the capacity, ergonomics, function and ease of use with the trigger, safety, and magazine release, the sights, the ability to float, the price, and then I'm also going to do reliability, accuracy, and the comfort when shooting. And these are going to be ranked like mini golf, so the lowest score is actually the one that's going to win at the end of this contest. So first off, the speed to deploy. Well, because the Chiappa Little Badger is a folding design, basically you just have to snap it open. So pretty easy on the Chiappa Little Badger. That one is really easy to use. On the Ruger 1022, because this one has the Magpul X22 backpacker stock, the ability to deploy the firearm is very quick as well. And then on the Henry US Survival, obviously it takes a little bit longer. Their design is not so much for the speed to deploy, but more about the convenience of it and being able to carry it when you need it. Also, again, the ability to float if it were to fall in water. The story goes, I think these were used for US pilots a long time ago. They would keep it under the seat in their cockpit, and if they had to bail out, they would grab it and they could have a rifle. I'm sure there's some truth to that, and there's also a different story. But let's look at the speed to deploy. Little Badger comes in first place with 1 second, 1022 comes in second with 3 seconds, and the Henry is about 40 to 45 seconds. Now again, the speed to store them, this is how long it takes to break down the gun, how long it takes to put all the components away and store them. So again, I think the Henry US Survival is going to take the longest. However, it does take a little bit less time to break it down than it does to set it up. The Henry does have the unique ability that everything stores in the buttstock, so it is a very compact package, and it should be watertight when it's all closed up. Next, we'll take the Little Badger, and you just grab the takedown lever and basically fold it in half. So, again, pretty dang fast on the Little Badger. And then the 1022 takedown, this one is not much longer than the Little Badger. You basically have to lock the bolt back and pull the release lever on the bottom of the barrel, twist it about a third of a turn or a quarter of a turn, and then it basically breaks apart and stores in the stock. So not long at all on the 1022. So if I'm going to look at these side by side, again, the Little Badger, about 1 second to store it, 1022, 12 to 13 seconds, and you can get that faster if you practice. And once again, the Henry coming in about 40 to 45 seconds. Now moving on to the portability and the size of these three devices. At first glance, the Little Badger, it seems that it's a little bit smaller than the Henry US Survival, and it is in one dimension. It's thinner. So the thickness of this frame is a little over an inch, maybe an inch and a half at the thickest point. Very simple to store, very lightweight. The 1022 obviously is going to be the biggest out of the three because it does have a full traditional stock on it, even though it's a takedown, and it has a full 16.5-inch barrel. This particular one has a muzzle brake on it, but that doesn't really add to the length because the barrel is still shorter than the overall stock length. So in this particular case, it would appear that the Henry US Survival is the winner. The Little Badger comes in second place, and the 1022 takedown comes in third. Now we can jump on to weight, and I think this one is going to be a pretty clear-cut decision. Obviously, the Little Badger is going to weigh the least, and it comes in very light at a astonishing 2 pounds and 15.5 ounces. So that is very light, and that's something you need to think about if you're out in the bush carrying something like that around. Now the Henry, again, because the stock is hollow, and this one is a pretty lightweight gun, this is going to come in second place, and of course, this is going to come in right about 3 pounds, 8.5 ounces. so just a little over a half pound more than the Badger. And then, as you could expect, the 1022 backpacker, X22 backpacker stock on the 1022 takedown is going to be the heaviest at 5 pounds and 14 and a half ounces. And this really is not a fair comparison because this one has a heavy barrel and a red dot and a few other add-ons to it. So it's not really a good comparison on weight, but as they're set up, this is how they come in. Now, looking at capacity of these three firearms, the Henry comes with two 8-round magazines from the factory, so the factory capacity would have been 17 rounds. I purchased a third magazine because it does allow you to store one in the chamber and two in the buttstock for a total of 24 plus 1 rounds. So that's not terrible in a survival scenario to have 25 rounds of ammo. It's better than anything less than that. So again, 24 plus 1 on the Henry. Moving on to the Chiappa Little Badger. This one is pretty unique in that it has this ability to store rounds in the buttstock. You can store 12 rounds of 22 long rifle in the buttstock and one in the chamber. So 12 plus 1, total capacity of 13. And I've seen people do some creative things with wrapping paracord around the stock and making it basically into a pouch to put more. But as it comes, you really have the capacity of that 12 plus 1. Now, the 1022, I'm going to go with the standard 10-round magazines because that's the most compact way you can get it. And this particular stock is really kind of ingenious because you can store one 10-round magazine in the receiver, and then you can store up to 3 more in the buttstock. So you could have a total of 40 plus 1, 41 rounds. Or if you choose, you can store one magazine in the receiver, one extra magazine in the buttstock, and then you can put an additional package of about 50 rounds of ammo, and you could throw some more loose in there. But in this case, I could throw an entire box, 50 rounds in the buttstock, so I could technically have 20 rounds in magazines, an extra 50, and then an extra round in the chamber for a total of 70 plus 1. So obviously for the capacity, the 1022 takedown in this configuration definitely wins. 70 plus 1 for the takedown, 24 plus 1 for the US survival, and 12 plus 1 for the Little Badger. Now, I know ergonomics can be a little bit subjective to the shooter, but in general, I'm just talking about how easy it is to hold this particular gun, how easy it is to charge the firearm, how easy it is to fire it, unload it, and reload it, and things like that. So as uncomfortable as the Little Badger is because it has an extremely short length of pull, the ergonomics actually aren't that bad, and because it's a 22, you won't have a lot of recoil either. Now, the Henry US Survival has a kind of non-traditional stock, even though it does have kind of a pistol grip in the stock. The stock itself is really thick, and the receiver is offset to the side. The safety is on the rear of the receiver, not in the trigger guard like you would have in a traditional firearm. And the sights on this aren't that terrific. The front one is really wide, and the rear one, while it does have two different peep sight holes in it, you need a screw to adjust them. But dropping the magazine is really easy. Reloading it can be a little bit difficult. You kind of have to look at it. So the ergonomics aren't terrible, but they're not really traditional, and it will take a little bit getting used to be proficient at using this rifle and to be quick deploying it and putting it away. So that's just my observation. The length of pull actually isn't too bad for a survival rifle, but the safety, like I said, is a little bit awkward to use. And just the fact that the receiver is offset in the stock and the pistol grip part of the stock is really thick, it makes it a little bit difficult to use. So that is something to consider. Now, lastly, moving on to the 1022, there's no surprise here. This is the easiest gun to function. This is the simplest gun to operate. All the controls are exactly where you'd expect them to be. And in this particular case, again, because I have a red dot on the top of this, ergonomics are very good. It has a good cheek riser on the stock. So obviously the 1022 is going to win the ergonomics and the shootability and ease of use category. So as an overview, the 1022 takedown wins. The Little Badger is second, and the US Survival comes in third. The function and ease of use is a little bit different. The Little Badger is actually simpler. The 1022 takedown is in second place, and the Henry US Survival comes in third because it is a little bit awkward to use. Now, when it comes to the sights, the Chiappa Little Badger actually has some pretty decent rear sights on it. It's kind of like an M1 carbine where the windage is adjustable with a knob and the elevation is adjustable with a sliding ramp that has kind of a ball detent in it. So it has different locations from 0 out to about 300 yards. It is made out of plastic. It's a little bit chintzy, so I don't know how they'll hold up if you were out in the woods, but they're very simple to use. And as far as being a kind of a ghost ring and a post front sight, they work pretty well. It has a set of wings to protect the front sight on it. So I think those are pretty decent. Going on to the Henry US Survival, the rear sight on this is a really crude peep sight. That little flat piece of stock actually has two different size holes in it. So if you take that screw and you loosen it up, you can adjust the elevation. You can actually flip it around and get a different size aperture. And the front sight is a pretty wide, flat blade that is made out of plastic. I have no idea on the longevity of it. However, you got to remember that most of the time this barrel is going to be stored in the stock, so there's little chance of that getting damaged. And again, the 1022, it's not really a fair comparison because I do have a red dot on the top of this one. But if you can imagine a standard 1022 that has kind of a buckhorn rear sight and a brass bead on the front, even those are pretty good sights. So again, if you had a normal sight on this with a standard 1022 carbine barrel, I think you would probably have about the same accuracy as you would get out of the Chiappa Little Badger. I did cheat by sticking a Crimson Trace red dot on the top of this, although it's a pretty big dot. I think it's a 5 MOA, so it doesn't really give you that much of an advantage. But again, the Takedown and the Little Badger, I think, are tied in first, and the Henry comes in second place. Now, when it comes to the ability to float, this one's pretty simple. The U.S. Survival wins. The 1022 and the Little Badger tie for second because they'll sink like a stone. When you look at the cost, this again can be subjective depending on what you put on the guns, but I'm looking at the three that I have here. The Chiappa Little Badger was a relatively inexpensive gun, and I have no frills added onto this thing, so right out of the gate, this one will probably be the cheapest. $250 plus tax out the door, that's what I paid for it. And again, prices change over time. The 1022 Takedown, when I purchased this one, I think I paid like $315 for just the gun itself, but I've changed the stock and the trigger and the barrel and put an optic on it. So as it sits right now, I have $879 invested in it. And again, going back to the Henry US Survival, this one is just kind of a bare bones gun that I bought, and it's all factory original. I have not added anything to it except the additional magazine. And I did get this one on sale as well, so I believe I had a 10% off coupon when I purchased it. And right now, as it sits, this comes in at $298 plus tax. So it's in the middle as far as cost goes. And again, if we look at that breakdown, Little Badger $250 plus tax, the Henry $298 plus tax with the extra magazine, and the 1022 Takedown, as you see it, $879. I probably have about $725 invested in the 1022 Takedown, and it's probably not a fair comparison to use a 1022 Takedown in this comparison because it is a lot more expensive than the other two. However, when you're thinking about being out in the woods, something that's portable, something that's collapsible, the Takedown really is the 1022 that you'd want to have with you. So if we tally up the points thus far, looking at the Henry US Survival, it comes in at 22 points overall. If I look at the Ruger 1022, it comes in with 20 points overall. And if I look at the Chiappa Little Badger, it comes in with a whopping 15 points. So again, if you just look at it scientifically, the Little Badger right now is in the lead with the lowest score. But we really need to look at some other stuff as well when I get to the shooting. And then if you take into account storage bags as well, the Ruger 1022 comes with a nice storage bag, but it's not big enough to use as a bug out bag or anything else. So I don't really consider that as part of this decision. I would basically take my Ruger 1022 out of that bag. That's why I bought the X22 backpacker stock, because it fits in a backpack. And then the Chiappa Little Badger comes in this nice little, really slim nylon pouch that you can throw in a backpack or a briefcase or your trunk or anything else. And it's actually the most minimalistic pack. And of course, the Henry US Survival comes only in a cardboard box with a handle, but this is not something I would ever take with me for, a survival situation. I would basically take the gun out of this, keep it all contained in itself, and then I would just throw it in a pack and carry it out in the woods. So again, if we look at the three of these side by side, I know it's kind of subjective and it's kind of what you really want to carry. If you want to carry the extra weight of the 1022, it's probably worthwhile doing that. But again, the whole vein of this discussion was around ultra portability and a survival type gun. And while all three of these are viable options and everybody's going to have opinions on which one is best, I'm looking at it more of a scientific fashion where if I take the three of these side by side, which is the most portable, which is the most minimalistic, and which could get the job done if you needed it, all three of them are viable options. But again, at this point in time, I do think that the Little Badger is the most minimalistic and the most survival minded gun. It's the lightest, it's the easiest to shoot, it's the easiest to carry with you, but it does have some downfalls, such as the capacity and the fact that you only get one round at a time, so reloading it would be kind of a pain. But anyway, I can kind of say whatever I want. This is my video. And, what really will be evident is when I take these three out to the range and shoot them, which one has the best accuracy. Because as I've said before, if your gun isn't accurate, then it's not worth keeping. So I expect that each one of these will have relatively good accuracy. I'll probably take them only out to 25 and 50 yards to try to get a good comparison. But that'll be coming up hopefully soon when I can get back out to the range. It's almost the new year. My range opens back up in January for regular day use, and I'm hoping to get back out there and do a shooting video soon. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope you made it to the end. Have a great day. God bless America. Support your 2A rights. Get out there and shoot. And you remember, if someone asks you to give up some of your freedom for the greater good, remind them that freedom is always the greater good.